we thank you so much for coming out. It means so much to Sarah, my family, and I that you guys would all make it tonight. I know a lot of you guys are here because you saw a flyer in a store, or you're here because of a Facebook post, or you're here because you're a Bluegrass aficionado. You're here to see Big Richard, but whatever you're here for, we're just so grateful that you're here this evening. We have kind of this alternate agenda here, and that is to do two things. Number one, educate folks on what Lowe Syndrome is, and hopefully raise a little bit of money for two charities that are doing some really good work with Lowe Syndrome and within the Lowe Syndrome. Just by show of hands, before this event popped up, who here has heard of Lowe Syndrome in the past? Okay, cool. So a few close friends and family members. That makes a lot of sense. So the first thing is to kind of spread awareness about what Lowe Syndrome is, and I'll kind of go through that, and then Sarah's going to take over and talk a little bit about our experience with raising a child with Lowe Syndrome. So I'm a fourth-year medical student, so if I throw out a bunch of medical jargon, I'll try to keep this kind of brief instead of going through like really complex genetics and those sort of things. So just suffice to say, Lowe Syndrome is a very, very rare genetic disease. It occurs in approximately 1 in 500,000 births. It's X-linked and it expresses in mosaic form, which genetics nerds will tell you means that it primarily affects boys. Again, 1 in 500,000, so very, very rare. It's really, really infrequent to come across a doctor that has heard of Lowe Syndrome, because there are many things that you learn of in medical school that are like, you learn of in passing, and then maybe one day you see it again, it's like, oh, I heard about that in medical school, but this is so rare that you don't really even learn about it in medical school, because the odds of you encountering it in your practice in the future are very, very low. Lowe syndrome is short for oculocerebrorenal syndrome of Lowe, which is a really long way of describing all of the symptoms that typically present in a kid with Lowe syndrome. Ocular refers to the eyes, so every child with Lowe syndrome is born with bilateral congenital cataracts. Cataracts presenting in somebody who is a little bit older can be repaired electively, so you can wait for a little while. But if you're a child and you're born with cataracts, if you don't operate on those really, really fast, the optic nerve refuses to develop. So kids like Harrison who were born with cataracts have to have surgery very, very early on. That's oculo. Cerebro refers to the central nervous system. All kids with Lowe syndrome are born with hypotonia, hyporeflexia, and developmental delay. Hypotonia is like if you shake somebody and their hand is like a limp fish. That's low muscle tone as opposed to strength, which refers to your ability to move objects with force. Hyporeflexia is just when a doctor hits on your kneecap and you kick him out of the door. Hyporeflexia means that you don't kick him out of the door. In fact, it's really hard to find reflexes on a child with Lowe syndrome. And then developmental delay, of course, is kind of the modern term for what used to be referred to as mental retardation. Renal, the third part of oculocerebrorenal syndrome of Lowe, refers to the kidney. The kidney's main job is to filter all of the blood, keep things that you need, and get rid of things that you don't need. Kids with Lowe syndrome lack the ability to keep the things that they need, so they end up needing a fair amount of supplements and medicines to help them stop wasting calcium, which causes them to develop kidney stones. Sadly, there is a decreased life expectancy for kids with Lowe syndrome, and the oldest recorded case, I believe, is 54. Sarah will talk to you now about our experience with Harrison.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Sarah. This is Harrison. And I would say that our story would begin at 24 weeks gestation when we found out he was going to be born with bilateral cataracts. And not knowing what to expect with that, I had realized that I would need to surrender and give that up to God. And just, I knew that we couldn't walk this alone. Fast forward to him being born, he's sloppy and has the cataracts that we knew he would be born with. But there was just so much more going on in our minds at that point. Like, okay. Soon enough, physical therapy was introduced. And then we had a vision therapist working alongside them, and they were visiting our house frequently. So I thought, okay, we can make it through this. It's fine. But then we got in touch, or a genetic doctor got in she put in for a shotgun test to see if anything would be related to the cataracts, and when that came back negative, she thought the cataracts and hypotonia must be linked. So she put in for a microarray test, and while we waited for the results for that, a few weeks later, he had to go to the hospital for failure to thrive. He was using up more calories than he was taking in, so working hard to get the nutrients that his body needed. So at this hospital, I just had to repeatedly put my dependence on God every single day, and just be reminded that we weren't alone and that He was faithful through all of this. On the 4th day of being in the hospital, a neurologist walked through an MRI exam that they did on Harrison. So they found that his pituitary gland was small, his left and right hemisphere in the brain, or the corpus callosum, was thinner, which explains the floppiness, and he had protein in his urine, so he was peeing out things that his body needed. So all of this, the neurologist said he suspects Lowe syndrome, but he couldn't confirm a diagnosis. But the diagnosis came outside of the hospital a couple weeks later. So we finally had a name to it, Lowe syndrome. And I had seen videos already, and it was one of those, okay, this is going to be kind of devastating. But once again, I was reminded that we weren't alone in this, because God has been faithful through all of it. And meeting new people through Lowe Syndrome support group, the closest people near his age live in Pocatello, and there's a 4-year-old who lives in Vancouver, Washington. Other than that, they're just spread out all over the place. So we've had the privilege of getting to know people all over. And that is what the Lowe Syndrome Association helps with. So the Lowe Syndrome Association, they fund research, and they help parents and families that are spread out get together for biannual conferences that happen at different places, different states, every time they do them. The last one, which we missed out on, was in Fort Worth or Dallas, Texas. And yes, so it allows parents to connect. They can support each other emotionally, because if you saw the video, there's so much that goes into helping them meet their milestones. It is a battle that's fought consistently, and if you, if they go too long, then they regress, and you start all over again with certain things. So right now he can sit up. We're still working with foods, certain textures. And to also introduce, the other, the Waylon Sullivan Foundation, that was started up by a parent who lives in Alabama, and her son is 4 years old, Waylon. He is also in the video, and they started it when 2 Lowe syndrome kids passed away last year due to COVID complications. So we joined the group when that was going on, so we didn't really know them, but getting to know them, they are such a sweet community. And it happens so unexpectedly, where hospital stays, you don't know how long you'll be in the hospital or be out of work. So these families come to really need those funds, and it's just family or friends who've heard of Lowe syndrome that can really help them, or if they're part of the church. So that is why we are doing this fundraising event, to share Harrison's story and others who are like him. They aren't all the same. Exactly. But it needs to be advocated, and it needs to be shared. So thank you for coming out to this event.